Good evening and welcome to tonight's edition of Fact Sheet. Here, if it's not a fact, we don't discuss them. Tonight we are preoccupying ourselves with a very important matter which has taken center stage. For those who have been following the issues since last week, many would have thought that this day or today, our focus would have been on the issues of Parliament and whether it's hung and whether the NDC or the NPP has a majority in Parliament and all. Some would have thought that our focus would have been on the Supreme Court and the petition that the NDC has sent to the Supreme Court. But that was not to be, per the 22nd address of His Excellency, the President, where he indicated that schools, especially for the basic schools, would be reopening from the 15th of January. That was last week, Friday. And so yesterday, which was a Monday, most of the students went to their campuses. The assurance had been given us that most of these schools would be fumigated. Most of these schools would have their PPEs supplied to them. Amidst the fears and concerns about, whether COVID-19 period people should be sending their wards to school and whether the time was okay for the President to be reopening school, especially when we have heard of new variants from across the world and countries shutting down their doors to other nations, His Excellency, the President, gave parents, teachers, the assurance that all would be done to ensure our wards, our children are not in danger. On Monday, when the media decided to pay a visit to most of the campuses where the students were thronging in after several months of staying in the house, to our dismay, surprise, most of the public institutions did not have their PPEs. It became a matter of concern by evening when it was virtually a matter that cut across the country. How did we get to the point where the PPEs had not been supplied? How did we get to the point where guidelines for the various institutions to use to maintain order on campus had been released only on Monday? That's what we are preoccupying ourselves with this evening on Fact Sheet. My name is Samuel Shen, and my guests are with me even as we interrogate the issues of the various challenges we experience and we are experiencing when schools reopened. Stay with us even as we discuss the issues. And you're welcome back. Once again, my name is Samuel Shen, and this is Fact Sheet live on ETV and live on Facebook as well. Our handle is ETV Ghana. You can follow the conversation and let us have your thoughts, your views, and your comments through our social media handles. But whilst you watch, we entreat you to share the link to various platforms and groups that you belong to. Tonight, to help me discuss the issues, Dr. Daniel Osabuete is a senior lecturer at Accra Technical University and also an educationist, and Mr. Kwesi Nemo Jr., programs officer for the Africa Education Watch, would also be joined on Zoom by Mr. Cheba, for he's the PRO for the Association of Private Schools, and then KD Nonsal, who is the National Vice Chair of the Ghana Coalition of NGOs in Health. We'll be seeking their views on the matter of the reopening of schools from the tertiary through to the basic level. So I'll start in the studio with Mr. Daniel Osabuete and pick his thoughts as to the developments we witnessed when our students, our wards, our pupils went back to school on Monday, which was yesterday. So gentlemen, good evening and welcome.
Good evening and thanks for having us.
All right, so I'll start with you, Mr. Osabuete. The news that His Excellency the President gave during his 22nd address to the nation, and where he indicated that schools were reopening from the basic through to the upper level. That news, as an educationist, as a senior lecturer, how did you receive that news?
Yeah, thank you, Sammy, and let me say good evening to all viewers of ETV. Yes, our students have been home for close to 9 months, and they've been yearning to go back to school. So it wasn't, I wasn't surprised when the President announced that on the 15th of January, all schools will be reopened. But on the other hand, I see it more of mixed feelings. You see, we have parents who hitherto were yearning that their children will get back to school. But when it was announced, then they started asking questions. Is the country prepared, okay, in the midst of COVID-19? And we also been told that the second wave is almost with us. So it's really government prepared to reopen schools. So by and large, on one hand, we want our students to go back to school, complete their programs, and then we are faced with this COVID-19 pandemic. Now, I was looking forward to seeing better arrangements prior to the reopening of schools.
How do you mean by that?
Yeah, you see, the final year students were allowed to write their exams, and then they have left. You look at the BEC candidates, you look at the WASI candidates, and then those in final year, the universities, they were able to sort of manage the situation for them to go through their exams successfully. Some of the problems popped up. We all saw some of the problems. Inadequate PPEs, complaints here and there. Some of the students were not even going by the protocols and all that. So having learned from the past, one would have expected that would have put in enough preparation. But Sami, as we speak, today I visited a school, a basic school, and then I spoke with one of the pupils. So the first question I asked him was that, is there Veronica bucket, in the school? Then he said, yes. How many? One. Now, when you enter, do you have a teacher who supervises the washing of hands and to make sure that you sanitize your hand as well? He said, no, optional. So any pupil who gets there and there is nobody to supervise can then choose to wash their hand or get a sanitizer or just go straight to the classroom. So in terms of supervision, I was not too happy with it because you are talking about pupils, basic school children, who have to be supervised to do the right thing.
But at what point did you meet this child or this student? Was it inside the campus or outside of the campus?
Outside the campus.
Outside the campus. But could it not have been the case that, children, he really didn't know the extent of information you were looking for from him, and so simply just told you anything?
No. You see, I asked, do you have thermometer gun? Then he said, yes. How many thermometer guns did you see that day? He said, only one. You have Veronica bucket? Yes. How many? One. And I'm talking about a school that has about 300 pupils. And Sami, can you imagine when you have 300 pupils going to their various classrooms and you only have one person using thermometer gun to check their temperature? I mean, the delay, and it will also get to a point where whoever is even taking the temperature will not be able to control them again. So what prevents us from getting about 3 or even 4 thermometer guns for each school? So at least it will make whatever they are doing, it will fasten the work that they are supposed to do. So in terms of the PPEs, I'm seeing some efforts, but comparing to what we saw when they were asked to go back to school and write their exams, the final years, I'm seeing that this time they have been overwhelmed by the numbers. So is it that we didn't know that the numbers will increase, for which we needed to also increase the PPEs? Those who be supervising all these things, didn't we know? At least we should have done all this. So I'm calling on GES, I'm calling on the authorities in the various schools that we have to speed up some of these processes, because look, COVID-19 is real. It is real. And we have to protect our children.
All right.
Yes.
Let me go on Zoom and speak to Mr. Nonso, who is the vice chair of the Ghana Coalition of NGOs in Health, and pick his thoughts on what they see could have, allowed for the various gaps and challenges we experienced when the schools reopened on Monday. Mr. Nonso, what do you guess was a problem for which we experienced what we saw?
Yeah, thank you very much, and good evening. I think what we experienced the school opening is that it looked as if the whole issue of opening school was done in a rush. In the sense that The announcement was made all right. Parents were not sensitized, and the school authorities were not even given the opportunity to have what is necessary. In turn, you get Veronica bucket, you won't see the temperature gun, particularly in the primary schools. The GES have it because they have Form 3s coming to write exams and go. But the primary KG to primary 6, most of the areas have visitors. They will not. They don't know this thing. What about temperature gun? They were only given liquid soap in some areas, and then what they call it, hand sanitizer, 1 per class. All the schools I went to around, I was in a primary school. In fact, I don't think it's the best of it all, because the parents should be educated that the government cannot provide these things. So every parent should ensure that each of their ward should be given the nose mask, hand sanitizer, and because we have areas we don't even have water. In my number of business primary schools in the country, you see. So all in all is that the education office, the district, municipal, and the National Education Service do not actually do proper planning. As me, I believe, on my point of view, look as if they were racing against themselves. I don't know where the pressure was coming from to open schools. But these business things being introduced, and parents were not even educated as to what to do.
All right, it looks like we are having a little challenge with Mr. Nonsol's line. We'll try and rectify that. And the studio and speak to Mr. Nimo and pick his thoughts on the timing of the reopening of schools, especially at a time when, you know, the COVID-19, you know, the Ghana Health Service website told us that, look, the numbers that we were churning out were exponential. They were huge figures, and it was scary. And so government should have hastened slowly before taking the step to reopen schools in the first place. Again, with the news we were getting about a new variant, South Africa, Kenya, you know, UK, and several other places, should government have hastened slowly in terms of reopening the schools? Should we have paused?
Thank you very much, Sammy, and I'd like to say good evening to your cherished viewers. I feel that the reopening could have been hastened steadily because although the number of active cases we have at the moment is sort of equal to what we had when we reopened for the first and second cohorts to go, I believe the lessons we learned from the previous reopening should have guided us enough for us to avoid most of the challenges we are facing now. During the initial reopening, Africa Education Watch deployed monitors to most districts in the country to monitor reopening and how protocols were being observed. It would interest you to know that most of the things we realized then regarding PPE deliveries, hand washing protocols, and all those things are recurring now. Then the numbers were few. Now the numbers are large. Then we were told that each class is supposed to have 30 students. That is the class size. That is the limits the class can take. But now GES comes out with a guideline that says, it puts a particular word there, if the class size is unbearably large, district director should use their discretion to, arrange the people in the class, which we believe is the first flaw in the guideline that the GES outlined. Because as an authority on education in the country, we're hoping that though you brought your guidelines late, it should have been late but perfect, because this is education in crisis we're talking about. The GES guideline states a number of things that we believe that the key amongst them that will protect our kids has to do with the nose mask, the hand washing, and social distancing. Yesterday, I visited a number of schools in Tema and Ashaiman. You enter the school, even at the gate, you don't find a Veronica bucket there. And there is no sign, no face mask, no entry whatsoever. You enter and then you spot, or you don't spot a Veronica bucket at all, which tries to tell you that preparations have not been duly made and deliveries have not been made. You ask and then you are proven right. And then we realize that some of the authorities are also apprehensive to speaking to people who come seeking information because they've been asked not to speak to anyone. And most of those people that were apprehensive were people who didn't have their deliveries given to them. Basically, we at Africa Educationalist believe that per what we've seen, the reopening could have been delayed until things were put rightly in place. Because we are not just having the ordinary COVID we had when we reopened the first time. We have a COVID with a new variant. The president himself announced it, and you could see his demeanor. But he had already announced that schools would reopen. So as it was nearing, we were only hoping that GES would have done its homework well and taking all stakeholders' consultation and engagement into consideration to ensure that the issues that were raised pertaining the first reopening, these issues of PPEs, social distancing protocols being flouted and all, we experienced them the very first time we reopened. And we made all the noise about it. But if we are seeing it now, it only proves to us that GES didn't listen or wasn't well prepared enough to reopen for this cohort to also come back. Because even in the first instance, they were mature to an extent. But this time we have our basic school kids who are fragile and they are vulnerable. If we don't protect them, they will bring the viruses home to affect the entire population.
All right, so let me ask this. The explanation that has come from some government officials that I have spoken to, that I have listened to, is that most of these materials were distributed somewhere last week, Thursday, Friday, at the district level. Now, the problem was that some schools had not gone for these materials to their various institutions for onward distribution to various wards and pupils who are in these institutions. Is this tenable for you?
As at yesterday, in South Dai District Education Office, there was no PPEs to be distributed. That's a typical example telling you that not all PPEs were distributed. And if you go to a school in a municipal assembly or a district assembly and the school is telling you that their PPEs have not been delivered to them or they've not received them, they've received half, the ones they received were not enough, so they can't distribute because it wouldn't be up to the students that have reported to school on a day GES says we should report to school. Then it tells you that it's only a face-saving PR that these government officials are doing, because the reality on the ground, it's not only, say, ETV Ghana who is saying it, Africa Education Watch, it's all over the country. And the reports we are getting is just similar to the reports we are getting in every nook and cranny of the country. PPEs have not been delivered. Social distancing has been thrown to the wind because students have not been properly primed and made aware of the times in which they are coming to school. Some teachers have taken it upon themselves to educate them, but it's not as if they've been asked to. They are doing it because they know they need to do it because the students have come to be in school with them. Even parents and teachers were not in masks. Some parents and teachers were not in masks. Some parents and teachers were not adhering to the protocol. So how then do we expect the students to be aware enough to be adhering to the protocols?
All right. Mr. Sabuti, I'll come to you in a bit about the role that parents are supposed to play in all of this, because, you know, we can't shift all the burden on government. There's a role, there's a responsibility on the, you know, shoulders of the parents as well. But we'll come to that bit. Let me go to the, you know, Zoom conversation and speak to Mr. Chebafo, who is the PRO for the Association of Private Schools. Because if you follow the feedback we got from, you know, our reporters across the country and from other NGOs that went to inspect and monitor the reopening day, it was virtually throughout the entire country that the private schools seemed very much well prepared and equipped to welcome their students back to campus. And these are institutions that for the past 10 months or so had not been working, had not been paying their staff, did not have the requisite capacity in terms of funds, and yet here we were seeing them delivering. What could have accounted for that? Mr. Bafo, good evening. Hello, good evening.
Hello, good evening, Mr. Bafo.
Yes, can you hear me, Sami?
Yes, I can hear you. So what I want to find out is how the private schools were able to position themselves, so much so
Okay,
Now, when we speak about preparedness, we virtually exclude the private schools. How did it happen?
that's fine. That's fine. Very big good evening to your viewers. And though I'm having some challenges with the network, we may have to just manage. It appears that it's so clear. You are getting the picture that
All right, it looks like we're having a little challenge with Mr. Chiba first line. We will try
the
and re-establish contact with him, and then I'll go back to him because they play a very important role when it comes to the primary education. A chunk of Ghanaians have their
can you
kids
hear
in
me?
the private schools. Mr. Chiba, can you hear me?
Sure, I can hear you. Just that the network is quite unstable.
Okay,
So
let's proceed.
as I was saying,
Mm.
we took advantage of the long period staying in the house. And if you had observed, you could see that the body that was calling for reopening.
All right, it looks like the line is going to be a bit problematic this evening, but let me come back to the studio and speak to Mr. Osabuti. So the role that parents were supposed to play, regardless of the assurances given by His Excellency the President that all schools were going to have their full complement of PPEs, though we didn't see that. But parents had a responsibility as well to at least on day one provide PPEs and hand sanitizers to their wards, and yet we did not see that. Was it a failing on the part of parents that made us see the severity of the situation on day one?
Yeah, thank you very much, Sammy. I believe that as parents, the safety of our wards, we have to prioritize it. We shouldn't expect government to do everything during this pandemic. Now, as a parent, what are we supposed to do? Just get small hand sanitizer, put it in the bag of that ward when he or she is going to school. And you see, we also have to teach them how to even use the nose mask, because some of them seeing the nose mask for the first time, some even get scared by just the nose mask because they've not been wearing it. But as a parent, if we are able to take them through how the nose mask is supposed to be worn, then it will give them that kind of encouragement.
But here is the case. You are assuming the parent herself or himself understands the processes, because it is obvious countrywide that adults are not even complying with the COVID-19 protocols. You sit in a trotro, they don't comply. At the market center, they don't comply. Even the so-called educated folks don't comply. So how then do we expect parents? You are thinking about Accra, but let's go to the very, 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 remote areas.
Sammy, that is why we shouldn't just sit here, or nobody should sit anywhere and condemn only one party in this whole conversation. That is the government. We have to ask ourselves, as parents, are we also observing the social distancing? Number one. Are we washing our hands? Are we using the sanitizers? Because if we've been doing it in the home, at least the children will also learn it before they even get to school.
But who's going to teach you, the parent?
We have to teach ourselves. We have to learn.
If you don't know, how do you teach yourself?
Sammy, this education has been going on for almost 10 months now. We open our television, we hear this education going on, our FM stations, they educate us everywhere. Look, I don't think there is a single person, a single parent in Ghana who have not heard that we have to you have to wash your hand, you have to apply the sanitizer, and then you have to practice social distancing. I don't think there is a single parent who said that he or she has not heard it. It is just that people don't care so much about the COVID-19. Can you imagine somebody say, oh, COVID-19 here, it is not going to, it will not thrive here, because unya benkubi dinner, it gets into your system, it will just kill the virus. So people have that wrong perception.
But is that not a matter of education for the people to understand the severity and the gravity of the issue we are discussing? If the people don't see it as severe, then it means there's a communication gap somewhere.
So that's what the communication has been going on.
How?
I mean, Happy FM, you educate, don't you?
Yes, we do.
Educate. And any time you tune into a television station, be it private or public, they continue to educate us. So then you ask yourself, is it that people are not ready to learn? Because let me be very honest with you. If parents have been observing the social distancing, right, before the child gets to the school, that consciousness has already been created. So it will not be anything new because it is something that they have been doing at home. Basically, just get Veronica bucket. Make sure it is outside there. You wash your hand after whatever you have done. You apply the sanitizer. By so doing, you are teaching the children how to use it.
Let me paint a picture for you.
Yes,
in a village somewhere where, let me use for instance, the River Brim is the only source of, potable water.
Yes.
That is not even potable water. That is the water they know.
Yes.
So the parent sends the children to go and fetch that water, bring it home. Water already is scarce. The one they are going to fetch is reddish because of Galamsey activities, not just in the eastern region, in the western region, all these areas. You think it's easy for them to tell children, wash your hands with this water we suffer to get, even this red one we're going to use. The nose mask you're talking about, it's easy for you to say you're buying a nose mask for 1 cedi 50 pesos, but that 1 cedi 50 pesos is somebody's chop money. So is it that we use the city life to generalize that of the entire nation, thinking it's applicable everywhere?
Sammy, it wouldn't be applicable everywhere because you have situations where you get to communities that are so deprived. Water may even be a challenge. Soap, some parents cannot even afford soap. Okay, so in such situations, it will be difficult for such parents to practice this protocols that we have just been discussing. Okay, but I think they should be in the minority. Okay, really? I think they should be in the minority. And so you ask yourself, so what have the state also been doing to assist such people? Because before the elections, when people were campaigning, I saw some potential MPs visiting remote villages and giving them sanitizers, giving them nose masks and all that. It is an indication that we can help ourselves. So who is going to take up that responsibility that this community is so deprived? People are not making ends meet so much. So let's help them. How many people are ready to do that?
I'll come back to the question you're asking me. Let me go to Mr. Cheba on Zoom and then ask about how the private schools were able to pull it off when it comes to their preparedness. So you were telling us about how you did it.
Yes, I mean, what I was saying was that it appears that we are just taking advantage of the long break, knowing very well that, of course, these children would not stay home for the rest of their lives. Surely we're expecting that school one day come back to normalcy as we have it today. So we're only taking advantage of the break. And as it were, as a private institution, we don't just need to always wait for government. That is why you are getting the dichotomy so clear. When you enter a public school today and a private school today, you get the excuse of government has not brought a PPE. You enter a private school today from yesterday to today, that excuse that government has not brought PPE is not there. Whether government brings it or not, since it's a private entity and you are equally running it as a business, the safety of the children is paramount. Any form of negligence would equally cost your business. So people took advantage of the break, started securing some PPEs in advance, putting things in place, working in tandem with the PTA just to ensure that everything is under control. And lo and behold, testing the things we put in place from yesterday up to today, you could see that everything was flowing so well. Interest, you don't get almost everybody coming to school, but the interesting aspect was that quite different from the normal things we know. This time, parents did not just allow wards to just come to school or send anybody at all to bring them. Parents decided to bring them themselves to come and also verify and ascertain the measures put in place just to be sure that indeed their children are going to be very safe in the school. We had to take them through the various processes, how their children will be managed in the school. So that form of assurance was given to parents. Then the fun aspect is that I had the guest mention parents helping and educating the children how to put on nose mask and all those ones. And to be honest with you, we feel it's rather going to be the other way around. The more reason why the children needed to be in school was that teachers more than their parents this day. When the awareness creation is intensified, when they go home, it may start having impact rather on the parent than the other way around. When you make it a fun, we've made the wearing of the nose mask, the washing of hands fun. In some of the schools I visited, I had the opportunity, I was given 4 regions. So from yesterday to today, I taught part of the Eastern region, Central region, Western region, and I'm back to Accra.
Like,
and my other colleagues are also in other regions, just to ensure that at least things are moving so well. Buses that convey school people from their respective homes to schools have now.
All right, so we'll try and work the line of Mr. Balfour a bit and then continue the conversation. But let me come to you, Nemo. And I'm asking, about the education bit. You think that people really understood the gravity of the issue we have been discussing for the past few months, maybe like 10 months now? You think people got it?
People got, I believe that people got the message. Because initially, every TV station you tune in is asking you to wash your hands. Every radio station you tune into is asking you to wash your hands. There were posters around wherever it is you find yourself. Whether you're passing by a school that is even closed, there are posters around there asking you to wash your hands. The education was very, very strong in the beginning of this pandemic. But I believe that because we got to an instance where political campaigning was becoming the rage between November and December, the education paused or ceased or lowered, and then now we could hear political campaigns rather. So we are done with the campaigning. We are done with elections. Do we still see any education going on at all? No. But students are supposed to be reopening school. So that is where the challenge is. The challenge is that initially the awareness was there because we were creating the awareness. The awareness was there because we were saying it all over the news that COVID is still around. COVID is still real. So let's practice this.
But there's a big difference between making an announcement on radio or TV and then the person consuming the content complying and understand the gravity of the situation. Yes, you can make an announcement, you can make a pronouncement, but as to whether the person takes you serious enough to want to apply it is another issue altogether.
What you're saying is very true, but then I could say we were practicing it as well, because the depictions were there. But now for a long time we are not being encouraged anymore to do it. Because even in public spaces.
Did we need encouragement or we needed enforcement? Because you see, there was a law that was stating clearly that if you flout the rules, the law would take its course. Initially, when the lockdown was enforced, we had the security personnel on our roads. It is today that we are being told that some 100 people have been arrested as a result of non-compliance. So if we had started this from after the lockdown, I'm sure people would have seen the gravity and the punitive measures that will be brought against them if they don't comply. And this is Ghana. Until the law catches up with people don't really comply.
The law has caught up with people. These 100 people that have been arrested, where are they going to be? The law has been enforced, and we all know, because initially a bus would be stopped. I've been in several buses in the past. Yes, during the lockdown. Buses would be stopped, inspections would be done. But then it ceased abruptly. It ceased. And although during those times people were in their face masks, people were, aware, it was still being enforced at the time that we believed that people were still aware. But then when we all, or let me say most people, decided to lose their guard, that was when the security and the enforcement was also loosening. So it means we were all towing the same lane. Now you meet someone who wants to enforce the law on you, the person is not even wearing a face mask.
All right. We'll come to that bit when we go for this short break and we are back. And the question we are asking is, did government communication put us where we are today, especially when they started talking about the new normal and that the disease is here to stay and that we must comply without enforcement. We'll be right back. You're welcome back. This is Fact Sheet Live on ETV, live on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram as well. Several comments coming through. If we do have the time, I'll go through some of these comments that we have received this morning. But I'll go to our Zoom link and speak to Mr. Nonso and pick his thoughts. Now, there are those who hold the view that it's not really a matter of monitoring. It's not really a matter of enforcement, but it's a matter of the communication government gave at the time they lifted the lockdown, that we are in a new normal and that all we needed to do was to accept that the disease was here to stay, and so we should simply just wear our nose masks. But around that time, they were easing restrictions, suggestive to the people that we are back to normal. Mr. Nonso, what's your take on those who hold the view that it was government's communication of the new normal which has brought us to where we are? All right. Let me try and see if I can get Mr. Nonso to respond to that question. Please, are you able to hear me, sir? All right. Too bad. It looks like giving us a hell of a time this evening. Let me come to the studio. Mr. Sabote, is it a matter of the government communication that it's a new normal? Let's stay with it. Let's observe social distancing. But at the same time, they were easing restrictions. Churches previously that were not being allowed to go to church, eases came. Trotro drivers that were not taking 4 passengers, it was eased. Taxi drivers, same. Hotels, some restrictions were eased. Is that what has brought us to where we are?
Yes, thank you. You see, the gradual easing of the restrictions might have also contributed to the problem that we are facing today. Why am I saying this? November, December, October, November, December, when politics was at its peak, political campaigns were going on, you have come up with a law. Do this, don't do that. If you do this, this is what is going to happen to you. So the enforcer of the law couldn't observe the law. You understand? So who polices the policeman? So the law is there, and then you have flouted it. Political campaigns were going on, even though we didn't see mass, people massing up and all that. But in a way, we saw candidates moving from one district, one town to the other, and people were just massing up. So you ask yourself, what picture were we painting? We have the law, but we have flouted it. So it appears as though there was no law. So there was no enforcement, nothing was happening. That has also contributed to what we are seeing today.
But if that would hold true,
yes,
then it would suggest to me that around that time when, the restrictions had been eased, the numbers around that time, August, September, thereabouts, should have been spiking. But that's not what we witnessed, did we?
We didn't witness that because the GES platform, the Ghana Health Service platform that was supposed to report daily updates, halted for a moment. I think until the president made the announcement on Sunday, it had been a while before the site was updated, yes. And even since then, I think it's just today that it's been updated, or later yesterday. But basically, because the communication we were getting, both directly and indirectly, from the government, directly being what they are saying and indirectly being what they are doing. They are saying one and doing two. If you are saying people should observe social distancing, and you are speaking to a group of people, or you are standing on a platform speaking where the people behind you have not even socially distanced, then what are you trying to tell us? You are trying to tell us that I think the virus is, they are trying to paint a picture to us that the virus is selective. It only has the people that it contracts. But then I believe that we shouldn't have paused or relented on the education and the awareness we were creating and how we were perceiving the virus to the people that we were talking to, as in from governments to us and from authorities to us. If we are saying that we shouldn't open churches, or we've opened churches and just a few people should come to church, then we are also organizing gatherings where just a few people would come. What you want the people to do is what you're showing to them. But then we have manifesto readings of both parties where there is a crowd. They only sit to observe, but when there is a break or there is a recess, you see everybody just lumping over.
All right. Based upon your final thing you said, let me ask the final question to you, Mr. Nimo. And that is to ask, we have been told over 100 people have been arrested for non-compliance. Are you in support of this move of the arrest of these individuals and maybe their prosecution?
I think it all has to do with the law that was passed during the period, that if you are found flouting, you would be arrested. So this is the law being enforced, and it's enforcing. The law is being enforced to serve as a deterrent to anyone who might feel the law is relaxed, because for a very long time we haven't heard that anybody has been arrested. But then again, how many people are we going to arrest, and where are we going to keep them, and what picture are we going to paint to deter the numerous people who are flouting the protocols? Because there are people who even believe that COVID is something that the government officials are only painting to us. What are you going to tell that person? You can even arrest the person, release the person today, the person would feel like there's nothing going on.
All right. Mr. Sabute,
Yes, I mean,
is it a matter of government prioritizing education over the health of, the students, or is it a matter of the government just deciding the system must run?
I think that government wants the system to run, but the very things that government has to put in place to ensure the safety of the children is what has in a way been compromised. The planning, okay, was it just to fulfill a promise that by January students will go back to school, or we took time to research and to put in place certain measures that when they get back to school will not be having such problems like shortage of PPEs, and some of the children in the school will not even be properly, they will not be monitoring them and all that. Now let me tell you why the private schools are doing very well in this direction. They want to prove a point. You see, they've been yearning for to partner government in the free SHS, but they have been denied. But look at the situation where in the midst of the pandemic, they've been able to raise enough money to acquire PPEs to ensure the safety of the children. Okay, so that tells you that the private sector, if empowered, they can equally contribute to education. You see, now, what we have to do as a state or as a country is, why did we even rush in getting back to school when we could have introduced the shift system? But I thought that this would have been the best time for us to revisit the shift system because of social distancing. You get to a class and you have about 70 pupils in a class, 60, dual desks, no social distancing. So I thought that let's get back to the shift system. We have children going to school from 7:30 to about 12 o'clock. They close by 12:30. We have another batch from 12:30 to 4:30. At least because we are not in normal times for this period, why can't you reintroduce the shift system? Because as for this social distancing, in fact, it is thrown completely to the dogs. We are not observing it. We get to the schools and it's not being observed. And that is a major contributory factor to the spread of COVID-19. So the earlier we tackle this issue, the better.
And to add to that, I think aside the social distancing bits where he brilliantly proposed the shift system, I think one thing we also need to look at is the decentralization of the PPE deliveries. Because we are having a situation where the PPEs have not reached the schools. GES, the PRO for GES yesterday mentioned that we would have PPEs delivered by the close of the week. schools have resumed. You asked schools to resume yesterday. You assure them that they have their PPEs intact and it's been delivered to them. You assure the entire nation that protocols have been put in place to ensure the safety of children before they even get to school. But here we are being told again by the same GES that they are going to ensure the delivery of PPEs by the close of the week, a week after reopening, 5 solid days after reopening. And then also, let's bear in mind that the PPEs procurements are not in the bosom of GES. It's under the authority of the senior minister. So we still have PPEs being distributed from a particular quarters while we can actually decentralize it and deliver it to the schools and not wait for those who have cars to go to the district offices to receive them. All right.
Let me go to, Zoom, link and pick the final comments from Dr. Ninso and, ask him, a wrap-up question. What do you expect to see tomorrow if the GES, the Ghana Health Service, seeks to improve the system per what we have seen, sir?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think what we expect to see from tomorrow onwards is that the parents should be rather given enough orientation to make it possible for that it was vaccine. The only vaccine we have is to observe the protocol, social distancing, hand washing, and using sanitizer. But the issue is, how are we going to raise the perception? Now there's a mistrust among the parents and the government, because most of the parents think that COVID, when it was time for election, nothing was said by COVID. Now it is time for education. They are saying COVID is on the surge. You understand? So that misconception, the mistrust of parents have to be dealt with in the first place to start tackling the issue. Otherwise, we are not making any headway. We will not make any headway because of that notion. So we have to actually make it at a point, and the teachers themselves. How many teachers are even convinced? The hand washing, how many teachers even know how to wash their hand properly? You understand? It's not about providing a vertical bucket, but who survives the proper hand washing? You see, there are a lot of little things we have to. Parents themselves, as you are saying, we don't have vertical bucket in most of the houses. How many houses have vertical bucket in their houses? The children don't learn it for nothing in the house. There's nothing for the house for them to learn. They can only learn in school. So if we get to write the schools, then to trickle down to the whole society, and then we'll make a headway from that point.
Mr. Nonso, we thank you for making time to join us.
So I think the school should be, they should.
And so that brings us to the end of tonight's discussion, which has been focusing our attention on the educational sector and the challenges we have faced since the schools reopened from the basic level to the tertiary level. The very many challenges, what the causes are, the solutions we can use to cure what we are experiencing now. I'd like to thank Mr. Daniel Sabute. He's a senior lecturer at the Accra Technical University and an educationist as well, joining us this evening. So I'm grateful. Mr. Kwesi Nemo Jr., program officer for the Africa Education Watch, also joining us. Sir, I'm grateful. And then Mr. Cheba for PRO for the Association of Private Schools. Unfortunately, the line was a bit terrible, and so we could not have a meaningful conversation, but I'm grateful you joined us tonight. And Mr. KD Nonso was the National Vice Chair of the Ghana Coalition of NGOs in Health. My name is Samuel Eshen. God willing, tomorrow there will be a repeat broadcast of the show live on ETV at exactly 10 a.m. I'm grateful to every one of you who watched us live on Facebook and Twitter as well. We'll be back tomorrow morning with the Happy Morning Show. Enjoy your evening.